Hi everyone again, it's David Thompson with Civil War Monitors Behind the Lines. Today I'm joined by Dr. Jill Titus, who is the Associate Director of the Civil War Institute at Gettysburg College. And today we are going to talk, about a variety of things, but chiefly we are going to talk about the upcoming Future of the Civil War Conference that's taking place this coming March. So Jill, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
If you don't mind, could you just give us maybe a little bit of a broad overview of what the conference is going to be about? Because it's shaping up to be quite an event.
Sure. So the Future of Civil War History Conference it's a partnership between Gettysburg College and Gettysburg National Military Park. Of course, this is 2013. It's the anniversary of Gettysburg. We're in some ways at what some people would call the high point of the sesquicentennial. Depends on if you're an 1863 person or an 1865 person. And our hope for this conference is to do something a little different. Instead of a traditional conference format where there are a lot of papers and a lot of more academic conversations about certain hot topics in the field, our focus for this conference is where are we as a field? When we approach the Civil War, what kind of questions are we asking? What are the issues confronting us, and where are we going from here? We're heading into a moment where we're going to be past the sesquicentennial, and a lot of the excitement that has been building, a lot of the programs that have been established for this anniversary, those will be behind us. So where do we go? What's going to keep the field alive? We're hoping to get at that point through I think kind of a creative angle, because the conference is going to be very conversational. Instead of having traditional papers, we are doing a series of panel discussions and field experiences. So these panel discussions will bring together historians working in a wide range of settings. We'll have scholars, K-12 teachers, college professors, National Park Service interpreters, historic preservationists, museum people, a really wide variety of practicing historians. And we hope to attract a number of people from the general public as well. And our focus is on learning from each other, talking with each other about what are the issues that we confront in exploring the history of the USCT, or in trying to understand the relationship between academics and Civil War reenactors, or understanding gender, both as a research field, as something that we teach in the classroom, and as something that we talk about with public audiences. So our thought is that these people don't necessarily get to talk to each other a lot. Oftentimes academics talk to academics, NPS people talk to NPS people, preservationists talk to preservationists, and we have so much that we can learn from each other. I think this conference is going to be a great opportunity for us to find some of the common points of interest that we have, and take some ideas from people practicing elsewhere and bring them back into our own work.
And I'm curious if you could maybe talk a little bit about kind of where this all came from. I mean, you obviously realized that Gettysburg 150th is coming up. As you mentioned, we're in the midst of the sesquicentennial. But how did you all conceive this idea of merging all these myriad interests together? I would imagine, I know you, for instance, have an NPS background, so I wondered if maybe that came into play a little bit, thinking about how you could try and draw kind of those threads into discussions with some academics and then the general public. So I wondered how how you all came up with this idea, because it obviously took a lot of planning.
I think it was very much of a joint effort. As you say, most of us here at the Civil War Institute actually come from an NPS background. Right. We have academic interests, we're public historians, we've worked on the front lines with visitors and National Park Service sites. So we always think about our work as having multiple parts. We're interested in contributing to scholarly conversation, but we're also equally interested to contributing to public conversation and helping tie these issues and these questions to things that are relevant in the present. So in thinking about what we wanted to do as a signature sesquicentennial program, we wanted it to be public focused, and we wanted to look to the future. There's so much good work going on right now that is filling all of those other niches. But I think what we're doing is unique. And we also felt that Gettysburg was a great place to do this. We have a terrific relationship with the park. We're always looking for opportunities to do things together, to build on each other's resources, and to find ways to continue to deepen that partnership. And we also wanted to use the classroom that we have outdoors. This is Gettysburg. Nobody wants to come to a conference in Gettysburg and just sit inside of a lecture hall all the time. We want to be out on the field. We want to be using the battlefield, and the field experience side of the conference really allows us to do that. So what we're envisioning is a series of programs that are not going to be traditional battle walks or civilian walks, but they're going to be programs that will take a group of participants out onto a specific part of the field, whether it's Little Round Top or downtown Gettysburg, here in the heart of the borough. And we'll certainly touch upon, okay, what happened in this piece of ground between July 1st and July 3rd, and why is that significant? But will also be opportunities for us to reflect on our own practice. So for an example, Margaret Creighton and Joanne Lewis. Margaret teaches at Bates College, wrote a great book about civilian experiences here at Gettysburg. Joanne is a licensed town guide here in the borough, are going to take a group out, and they're going to tour downtown, and they're going to talk about the civilian stories of the battle, but they're going to interweave that with, how do we talk about civilian stories? What kind of questions do we ask, and what kind of questions aren't we asking? What are we getting from this landscape, and how can we help our visitors think differently about what it means that there's no clear line between a battlefield and a civilian space? So these are meant to be sort of self-reflexive experiences. We're also doing one on Gettysburg Battlefield Rehabilitation, where a team of 3 rangers from the park will take a bus of folks out around the park, and they'll talk about the landscape rehabilitation plan that the park put into practice about 10 years ago, and will explain what they've done, where they've cut, what's next on the agenda, all that sort of thing. But they'll also reflect about their experiences doing so. What has been the public reaction? Why? Why do we do battlefield rehabilitation? Or can we ever really get back to the sense that we can see what they saw? Right. Or is that can't we get there? Are we creating a false sense of, well, now this terrain's been rehabilitated, so now I completely understand? Those are questions that we don't often, I think, have forums to ask ourselves, and I'm looking forward to the way that will all play out.
I wonder, as there will be time in the field, but there's also going to be time, as you mentioned, in the lecture hall, if you will, with these various panels. There is some work kind of going on behind the scenes in advance of the conference with these panels. I wonder if you could perhaps share a little bit the thinking behind that, what they're actually doing kind of in preparation for this conference, which is not typical for Civil War conferences. When you're dealing with these panel presentations, there might be some informal communication, but this is slightly different.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of us have gone to a conference and we've gone to a panel, and the last 15 minutes has been a fantastic discussion. Ideas are flying. People are speaking very informally. People are really following up on something that somebody else said, and we come away from it saying, oh, that was so amazing, and then we were out of time. Yeah. I wish we had had that kind of conversation the whole way through. So what we're hoping to do is to do the initial conversation behind the scenes. All of our panels are participating in conversations over email going into the session itself. We've asked all of our panelists to prepare short position papers that tackle some of the questions that we think go to the heart of the session topic. They're asked to respond very, very briefly, a page or two, to one of these questions, to clarify their own thoughts, to raise some further questions for the other panelists to chew on. And then our moderators are helping to create a back and forth conversation from those position papers. So panelists are really digging into the depth of each other's ideas behind the scenes before they ever meet face to face So when we come together in March, our hope is that so much of this conversation has already happened that the moderator can introduce the topic for attendees. Each person can give a quickly raise a few of the points that they think are most salient. They can say, so and so said this, and I've been thinking about it, and I wonder if perhaps the opposite is also true, or if you could make this argument. So it won't shut out those who weren't part of the initial conversation, but everybody's going to come in really having thought very carefully in a very focused way about this topic, having some familiarity with each other's opinions, so we can start the conversation, the back and forthing, right away. I think this will be exciting, and that this will allow us to leave more time for audience interaction as well, and audience participation. So we've been delighted with the conversations that are already occurring. People are asking some really provocative, really thought-provoking questions, and if those are the questions that are being raised now in January, I can't wait to hear what's actually going to be said when we get to the panels themselves.
Yes, a little bit of the horror, the idea that historians are organized in advance of a conference. It is quite a novel thing, but something, as you said, that is going to enhance the experience, not only for the panelists, but certainly for audience members, be it in the Q&A portion, but also just their general experience. Hopefully they can take a lot away from this. I wonder if you could possibly share, and I know this may force you to maybe reveal some biases here, just a couple of the panel topics, what we're looking at for the conference.
Sure. Well, we have a session that I have to say I'm really excited about. I'm moderating it. It's a session on ghost tours at Civil War sites. I think this is going to be interesting. This is a topic that we all have, well, maybe not all of us, but many of us have very strong feelings about. This is something that people speak very openly about their opinions on with colleagues and friends, but we don't really talk about it as a profession. And oftentimes our conversation, I think, is simply more of, oh, this is horrific. What is it? Why are they doing this? We don't get to the heart of what are visitors looking for? What are people getting out of this experience? Why have these experiences become so popular at Civil War sites? And is there anything that we as historians might learn from scholars of tourism or scholars of trauma that perhaps would help us better understand what's really going on besides just a group of people walking around with lanterns late at night? I'm really excited about that conversation. We have a session on conflict tourism. This is a concept that is becoming increasingly popular around the globe, but it's something that I think most American historians and Civil War historians haven't really delved into it. We talk about battlefield tourism, we talk about war tourism, but we don't necessarily put that in this broader framework of tourism of conflict. So again, we're going to mix Civil War historians with scholars of tourism. And we have a participant coming from the University of Central Lancashire in England from their Institute of Dark Tourism Research, who studies sites of dark tourism around the globe, prisons, battlefields, sites of mass violence. That's an angle that I think most of us who look out at a battlefield or even interpret a battlefield don't necessarily see. I'm excited about that conversation. We have a session on talking about slavery and contraband history with visitors. We have a session on the environmental history of the Civil War. We have a session on battlefield rehabilitation. We have one on new media, Civil War and new media. We have one on teaching the Civil War. I think there's great variety content-wise, and no matter what someone's particular interests are, I think there will be a lot of sessions on this program that will prove pretty exciting.
Certainly, and I think the hardest thing will be picking and choosing and making the tough choices. I don't think there's going to be a shortage for anybody who will be attending, having looked at the program. It's a matter of trying to follow your interests and be cognizant of the fact that you can't have everything.
Right.
You can't be selfish. You're going to have to pick and choose a little bit, but that's obviously the sign of a great lineup. Now, obviously, Civil War Institute extends certainly beyond this very special conference. You have your annual institute every June. I wondered if you could just share maybe a couple of the highlights that will be coming up with this year's iteration.
Sure. Well, the theme of the summer conference this year is the war in 1863. We're working our way during the sesquicentennial. We're working our way through the war year by year, and I think that's giving us a really exciting opportunity to talk about a lot of different things. If you really think about it, the war in 1863 covers a lot of ground. I believe we have about 30 speakers on the program. We have we have 2 blocks of time that are going to be devoted to field experiences, walking tours, battlefield tours. One of the features this summer is going to be in the footsteps of a soldier, where each tour will trace the experiences of one particular individual. We'll also have 2 staff rides this year. We had 1 last year. It was very popular, so we're offering 2 this year. And one other new thing for the program this summer is we're starting a series of what we're calling dine-ins, and this will be an opportunity at a designated mealtime. I think it's going to be a lunch. I can't quite recall, but participants will have an opportunity to sign up to be part of a small group discussion with one of the speakers about a predetermined topic in Civil War history. So this will be groups of 8 to 10 people sitting around over dinner talking with a speaker about a particular topic. The speaker will probably come armed with a few primary source documents, a few maps. This is really a great opportunity to not just, as a participant, sit and listen, but converse and take part in the experience of kind of delving down into this history and putting the pieces together for yourself, not just hearing somebody else tell it to you.
Well, and personally, I can speak I think this will be my 9th year this summer, and as a high school scholarship student, it's been a great experience with the Civil War Institute, so I can't recommend it to our viewers enough.
Thank you.
Just want to pass that little plug along for all of you. And finally, Jill, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you personally about some of your own work. I know your current project, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is dealing with the Virginia Centennial of the War.
I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
I'm in that weird moment of having just finished a project and then accepted a new job. So I published a book on massive resistance to school desegregation in Prince Edward County, Virginia at the end of 2011. And then I took this job over the summer. And I'm really still adjusting to what it means to have finished my first project and to be in a new position. So I'm working on a series of smaller projects right now. I'm working on an article about how we are, particularly within the public history world, how we are dealing with slavery at this time of sesquicentennial. That's going to be for the Journal of Civil War era. I'm working on a piece about the Gettysburg sesquicentennial. And I'm thinking about that Virginia Centennial Commission project as perhaps my next full-length book project, but honestly, it's not much more than an idea right now. But it intrigues me because the more I've seen about the Virginia Centennial Commission, the more I've realized that a lot of the key players on that commission were the leading massive resistance politicians, the folks who were calling the shots that resulted ultimately, through a very convoluted series of events, but ultimately resulted in the closure of the Prince Edward County School. So I'm intrigued to explore whether their understanding of the Civil War and their understanding of the challenges that confronted them in Virginia in 1960 were related, and I think they were. But I'm not sure how and to what extent, or how that history and that present interacted, but I think there's a story there.
And it's always exciting to be at that phase where you're deciding about the new project and
Right.
whether you're going to dive into the deep end. Jill, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to discuss this conference. Again, it's Future of Civil War History Conference. I believe the dates are March 14th to the 16th.
Yes.
It's a Thursday to a Saturday. Slots are still available for people?
They are. We are filling quickly, but as of now, we definitely have room for additional attendees, and our pool of registrants is really, really diverse. We have teachers, we have public historians, we have Park Service people, we have professors, we have graduate students, we have undergraduates, we have people who attend our summer conference and are intrigued at sort of delving into these topics in a different way. So there really is something for everyone. And the website is www.cwfuture150.com. And I encourage anyone who's interested in getting more information to visit the website. You can get a full version of the schedule. You can see all the information about registrations, about hotels, about dining options in Gettysburg. It's all pretty central.
Well, perfect, Jill. And I imagine those last spots will be swallowed up pretty quickly. So obviously for our viewers, take advantage of it if you can. I'll be there. Say hi if you happen to run into me. I always like to meet people who watch the interviews. So thanks again, Jill, and best of luck with the conference.
Thank you very much.